Hi, welcome to the Playful Warrior Academy. My name is Damien Harfield, and we help other martial arts schools grow and hit their revenue goals. What you're going to see today is a video with two parts to it. The first part is something that we do to reinforce good behavior whilst not having to have all of our time taken up by usually the ones or the twos that might be detracting attention from the rest of the class so that they can learn better and everybody gets a much better experience. And the second half of the class is a system or something that we created and use called the FAF method. It's very straightforward, but it allows your junior instructors to better teach on their own. Or, like us, if you're in the room, you're teaching different groups and bouncing between the groups, whilst the junior instructors are teaching their ones and twos. It allows them to teach them much, much better, which keeps everybody happy: the students, the junior instructors, the main instructors, and the parents. So enjoy.
When a student is coming up to you in line, so let's say that you've got 3 students in a line, talking specifically springs, ages 4, 5 and 6. And as we do, we've got an instructor holding pads, and we usually do no bigger than, say, 3s, because that's very manageable. 2s is better, because they get more repetition. But they'll jump up, guided stance, they'll do their techniques, and they'll either go and sit back down, or if we're doing spring pong, they'll go to the other instructor on the other side and do the same thing, right? But the thing that came up quite a bit was that when the students are standing up to do their techniques, we are so involved with the flow of the class that what we're not doing is getting the kid to slow down and make sure they've actually got the basics before they begin. So it looks a bit like this. So they jump up, they hit the pads, and they run over to Mr. Piper, as an example. Whereas what we need them to be doing is jumping up, hitting guard first, then doing the techniques, and if the technique is correct, so there might be a bit of coaching there, then they run or they go and sit back down. So what I wanted to do was make sure that as a very base, we do this. Now some of you have heard me say this recently. Faff. Now normally, faffing about is quite negative because it literally means not achieving much. But I always want you to think of faff when a student jumps up to do any techniques with you. And so, the first thing is going to be feet. Are their feet in the right place? Are they in a decent stance? So you check that first. Next up, it is going to be arms. Are they holding a guard? Or are they stood like this? Now some of them think that this is acceptable, and a lot of people do this, but say, oh, just bring your arms up a bit, because obviously, as we know, hands protect the face, arms protect the body, feet protect themselves because you kick them. So if they're down here, it's not doing anything. We're seeing a little bit of this. And the last one is, as always, focus. That's really important because it's one of the things that we tell parents, because we do, what we teach their kids. And that starts with, here, actually engaging with the instructor to make sure that they know what it is that is expected of them. So now, every single drill, whether it be spring pong or line work or running around and chasing after them and sending them to their parents, I want you to think every single time, faff, feet, arms and focus. Because that is so key to getting the kid to do everything else correct, that if we're missing that and we're rushing through it, then everything else kind of falls apart afterwards. So their techniques might be a little bit lackluster, or if it's, let's take a hook kick as a really good example. If they're trying to do a hook kick and their feet are here, then it kind of looks a bit like a crescent kick because they're not in the correct stance to begin with, so they can't facilitate that hook kick. So where faff or faffing about is normally negative, that's what you're going to practice today. So you're going to take it in turns, 2 at a time, to do spring pong, and you're going to make sure that you check faff every time. Now the next piece, after they are stood in the correct position, I want you to make sure that you coach. It's not just about doing the drill and having a good time. It has to be fun, absolutely, but they also have to be learning. So, yesterday, great example, we were doing spring pong quite a bit because that's what we needed to do to prep them for their grading, because it's a great way for us to be able to check their techniques. But what I noticed in some of the higher ranks as well, so it's a little bit like, ooh, place, they were just rushing through the drill. And even more importantly, we teach this when they're a white belt, thumbs were inside their punches. And the only way that they're going to remember that is if we pick up on it. So we need to be very mindful of the small details. And so it is feet, arms, and in those arms, you've got the thumbs in the right place because it's all part of your arms, and obviously the focus as well. So that's what we're going to be paying attention to today. Now I know that when we normally act like springs, we're really silly. Don't be overly silly. This time, what I want you to do is create little mistakes that your instructors need to spot, rather than being really, really silly. Because let's face it, our springs are very well behaved because they know what's acceptable in class. And we'll come on to that next bit next. But first, we're going to have a faffing good time. Right, so, very good. The next thing that I want to talk about is when you've got, again, we're talking predominantly ages 4, 5 and 6, but this also can work very well for family and children as well. Going up to pretty much around 9, 10 years old. It sort of stops working around 11 and 12. You've got to use a different tactic. We'll come on to that a different day. It is, how do you correct behaviour without telling them off? What happens when you tell someone off?
Shut down.
They can shut down.
They don't
If
listen.
they don't listen. Because they've shut down, they've stopped listening, cortisol starts to flood through their body. Cortisol is a stress hormone, which means they stop learning. And by telling, and we're going to stick with 4, 5 and 6, but by telling them off, in a typical sense, maybe shouting at them,
might cry.
then they shut down. They may cry, and it does happen occasionally. We do have to tell people off from time to time. I usually have to raise my voice for safety concerns more than correcting a behaviour. So, if we're not going to shout and bawl and scream and use traditional methods of discipline with our kids, what is a better way? If you've got, let me paint the scenario, 8 springs, sat down, you're demonstrating your drill, and one of them's messing around. You've got 2 options.
Start like whispering, almost making it quieter and harder to hear, so they have to stop messing around to be able to hear.
It's a really nice way of doing it. So you can lower the tone of your voice so that the springs can't really hear you, and they're like, what? And so you're getting their attention that way. That's kind of cool.
Complement the good behaviour in the other springs.
Very nice, we'll come back to that. Is that what you were going to say as well, Luke? Brilliant. So, what you've described there is more of a focus anchor for the entire room. What we're looking at is complementing the desired behaviour in another student. Typically, not always, but typically, if a student is messing around, what is it that they're trying to get?
Attention.
Yeah, attention. Now, it might be that they're a bit bored. That's a different topic. We don't make our classes all that boring, except when it gets towards grading time. Oh, it's a bit boring. So yeah, it's kind of repetitive because we need to make sure we're close to grading that you know everything. But typically speaking, our classes are very engaging, and so boredom isn't really an issue, which is really nice. But usually then, if someone's messing around in our classes, it's because they want our attention. So one of the ways that we put that attention into the correct space is by, instead of, let's say that you've got my drawing skills. And you know what, let's make the instructor blue. Da-da-da. You got your springs, got your instructor. You do not want to sacrifice the attention that you already have of these for just the one, because then you're ignoring the class and your time and attention is on one student. So the way that you do that is to complement the good behaviour. So let's say that you've got a spring over here who's sat with brilliant number 10 and they're focused. Make a big thing out of it. It goes a little bit like this. Oh, Ashley, dude, that's the best number 10 I've seen. And believe you me, if anybody else is kind of messing about, boom, they will start to sit properly. Because they want your attention. And Ashley got my attention through doing the desired behaviour. So it's a much more effective way. We've had it occasionally. Let's say that you've got 12 springs in the room. That happens quite often. Obviously we teach in teams. But you're having a bit of a day and it's like, oh, it's struggling to keep attention. Everybody was a bit here, there and everywhere. It's like, okay, 2 things. Number 1, raise your tone. Don't shout, just raise your tone. We did this in speaking, didn't we? So you want to raise your tone so that you are above the room. But You want to raise it in a positive way whilst you're complimenting the behaviour that you want. So, raise your tone to get their attention and compliment the good behaviour, just like I did with Ashley. Okay, so once you have complimented the behaviour that you want, and then obviously the student that was messing around starts to exhibit that good behaviour, you need to go straight to them and compliment for that behaviour too. Because whilst they understand that to get your attention they need to behave, they also need that behaviour reinforced. So as soon as they start to say with us, do number 10, or as soon as they start to show the behaviour that they want, it's not just that, oh, they're behaving so I can carry on with the class. It's excellent. Jimmy, great way of sitting, young man, and then you carry on the class.